This concept quickly. If anyone in this room is looking for an instructor, a drill instructor, a sergeant or lieutenant to get you through this academy, get up and get out now. It's not going to happen. I'm not here to get you through the academy. That's not my function. It's not my job. My job is to place obstacles in front of you. It's your job to develop a process and how to get through those obstacles and move forward. My job is to make things uncomfortable. Discomfort promotes change, promotes better habits. From there, it's up to you whether you develop the self-discipline to sustain those habits moving forward. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
If you're looking from the outside, for outside factors to get you through this academy, do not come back on the 8th. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Hey everyone, welcome to Fido Talk with Dave Thompson. On today's episode, we're going to get into the perils of rapid growth. We're going to talk about quick ascension, moving up fast, and the drawbacks that come with that. One thing I want to touch on before we really get into the episode is the growth of Bare Bones and the podcast. I'd like to first of all thank everyone for their support. Their views has been great. And at Bare Bones, we'd like to continue that growth. So if you guys find any of this content useful, if it's engaging, and it's something that you like, we really appreciate it if you subscribe, comment, and share. That's huge for us. That enables us to build more and to put out more useful content to help everyone in their leadership, growth, and development. So once again, thank you. Now let's jump into today's episode where we're going to talk about rapid growth. When we talk about that, we talk about receiving too much too fast. And this could apply to just about anything, right? Any subject, any genre, any industry, anything in general. We tend to live in a society now of instant gratification. I think this is probably an overused example, but the Burger King Your Way Right Away marketing campaign, which was tremendously successful, is very overrated in terms of people taking that to the extreme. When we talk about getting everything that we want quickly in a quick manner, one of the things that is often left out of the equation is what are you giving up for that? Nothing in this world is free, right? Like nothing. Everything comes with a cost. There's going to be a cost. There's going to be a sacrifice associated with what you're looking for. What are we giving up? What are you giving up for that rapid growth, for that instant gratification, for that your way right away? In industries, and pick whichever one you'd like, what you're giving up is some of the most invaluable, tangible aspects of growth. You're giving up on experience, on lessons. You're giving up on confidence, self-reliance. You're giving up on independent, reflexive, and critical thinking, and self-accountability. When you're given a position, for instance, if you're given a position of authority over someone without hitting certain marks, if it's not merit based, if you haven't hit certain tick points and checkpoints in ascension in whatever structure has been established to prove yourself worthy of that position, what, like, where are you at that point? Those lessons are truly invaluable. My question to you is, what is the rush? What's the rush? Is it the compensation, right? The practical side of things, the compensation and the benefits that come with it? Is it feeding your ego to say that I have made it, which holds zero foundation? That holds zero. If somebody's blindly handing me something and I'm moving up or advancing, there's nothing underneath me. Like there's no weight to that. And the system of the person who is blindly giving that to me, they're temporary. When they're not around, that whole safety net, that whole foundation, that whatever you were perilously leading or standing on is no longer. Then what do you do? It's a false sense of independence. You're heavily dependent upon that system that got you into that position. When that's no longer there, quite frankly, you're screwed. And to think that the people, the organization, the team, the division that you are now hold a position of authority over sees right through that. You can't be that naive to think that people don't see the layers of nonsense that put you in that position, right? And there's a huge allure to that, right? I've made it, I'm somebody. And those are all false pretenses. There's no metric that I certainly know of that equates that type of ascension to believability, credibility, trust, respect, authentic respect. Those type of intangibles that will sustain you and continue to be helpful in your growth and development as a leader. And people will jump at that chance. There's not a lot of pushback on that. There's not a lot of people or systems opposite of the quick ascension that will sit you down and let you know some of the pitfalls of that, right? If you are faking the funk and you are not who you pretend to be, if you're not playing that role, if you're not a successful actor in that role, you are going to be exposed. And that requires work, right? That requires work to try to catch up, to try to always stay ahead of the curve, to try to keep that mask squarely aligned on your face, right? That takes work. So doesn't ascending slowly, methodically, in a structured, merit-based approach, in a merit-based environment. That takes work also. The difference between the two is the level of sustainability. What is the payoff long term? Slow, steady ascension will gain you more experience, more credibility, build more trust, more sense of believability in your leadership style and approach. It will gain you more trust from your subordinates. It will gain you a bigger picture view of the organization, of the people you're working for and above. When you jump up quickly, there's a sense that the responsibilities are not increased, and that's a false sense of security, because you move up, the responsibilities inherently increase. How is jumping the process beneficial to creating a skill set or a tool belt to deal with the increased responsibilities? Just in practical terms, that doesn't really make too much sense. If you're not prepared for those responsibilities, your options are quite limited, right? You depend on people. Your circle of trust is smaller. With such a influx of information these days, to try to pluck the most effective and the most appropriate responses to whatever situation may come up is difficult, is very difficult. But if you haven't honed that process, that decision-making process, that reaction versus response process, if you aren't adept at those, again, those are intangibles, right? If you're not adept at those, your effectiveness declines sharply, right? And then let's just talk about the age factor, right? And when we talk about age, the conventional, young person out of college, 22, 23 years old, up to 30, 32, right? Let's talk about some factors that are almost always overlooked, at least a great, great much of the time, or a good portion of the time they're overlooked, right? And that is the ability to process from emotions to practical terms to rational thoughts. Now, one resource that I really have been digging into a lot is Henry L. Thompson, his book called The Stress Effect. An amazing book. Henry L. Thompson is a PhD. He has a wealth of leadership knowledge in the psychological aspects of it, the neurological aspects of it. But even more interesting than anything is Henry Thompson's background in MAC-SOG-V. If you don't know what that is, I can't recommend enough for you to do a deep dive and understand what that is. A quick summary of that is MAC-SOG-V is the very early stages of the highest level of special operations in the military. It's the predecessor and grandfather to the unit, CAG, SIF, also known as Delta Force. I can't recommend looking into Henry L. Thompson's background and the books he's written as they apply to leadership. One of the biggest takeaways is when we talk about age and maturity is the fundamental fact that the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that takes filters and takes care of cognitive conscious decisions, right? One thing that really surprised me is that the decision making process doesn't happen without emotion, but it's the prefrontal cortex that filters those emotions, and you're either able to tame them and mitigate them and use them appropriately because that prefrontal cortex has matured and developed, or you're not able to, and those primal emotions that come from another part of the brain are stronger and then they take over. How it applies to what we're talking about today is that the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that is responsible for decision making, reflexive thinking, for the cognitive abilities of a human being, isn't fully developed in a human being until their mid to late 20s. That's fully developed, fully matured. Those and that is within a an environment of um, I guess an environment of learning and experiences and obstacles and building through discomfort. Not a lot of people today in society and younger folks are experiencing that. Now, we talk about these things through social media, where a lot of people gain a lot of their data or their information through a paragraph and a half, a 30-second short video, or um, whatever platform or means of information that they obtain it from. That unfortunately only doesn't show you the big picture. Those means of information tend to only push a narrative. Again, to sift through all that is work. To open a book, to read the whole book and filter that information is work also. But again, it's more sustainable. You get a much wider picture and view on the particular subject, and you can make your own decisions from there. The more decision making that you use, the more decisions you make based off of as much of the available information as you have, given the time that you have, the sharper your decision making will be. In order to do that, though, we have to understand how the decision making process works. We as leaders don't, or I should say, the most effective approach isn't to tell somebody what to think. What we can do is influence them in what to think about, right? That was made popular by Sebastian Junger. If you don't know who he is, again, I suggest a deep dive into his background, his experiences, his books. Very interesting perspective. We as leaders tend to do what's comfortable, right? Because we're human beings. From a neurological perspective, the brain isn't sure when it's going to be fed, right? From a kind of a primal point of view. The way the brain operates is it does everything it can to conserve as much energy as it can, because it's not sure when the next source of energy is coming through. So it tries to take shortcuts across the board. And that is driven by one section of the brain. There is another section that deals with the physical aspect of feeding yourself and nutrition and the practical terms of that stuff. The instinctual portion that's not sure tries to conserve the energy. That's where the battle is within yourself, right? You know that you're going to be able to feed and nourish yourself. You understand that those things are going to happen, but just understand that there is a subconscious battle to conserve energy versus putting in the work to make these effective decisions and these effective practices in anything you do, not just leadership, but anything in your life, whether it be working out, building relationships, um, taking care of family members or loved ones. there's a practical aspect to it. But at the end of the day, it's a battle. Again, and we've talked about this on other episodes, there is a a constant battle of wills, right? Um, anything worth anything is worth fighting for. If it wasn't, there'd be no value in it, right? So understand humans, understand the human condition, not just for your subordinates and the people you're leading, but for yourself as well. Understand how the decision making process works so you can sharpen your skills. Understand how, or the difference between things just being handed to you and the rapid growth versus the slow, steady growth that, and even write it out. Write down the list of the evidence for rapid growth versus steady growth. Write out the evidence for against it, the pros, and then the cons, and vice versa, and see what you come up with, right? Try to exercise that mitigation of emotion as you're doing that, and see how it works out. One thing that has come up, or a question I've been asked is, well, then how does the military get away with having young team leaders, squad leaders, and in the age at which you're eligible for the military? And that's a great question. It truly is. It's not as simple as people may think it is. It's not that you have an 18 or 20-year-old kid who is just all of a sudden, you know, taking out whole military units on complex operations. That's not the way it works. It does take a couple of years to ascend. If you are a 21, 22-year-old E4 as a team leader in a platoon, and we'll use a platoon for this example, that means you are in charge of probably 4 to 6 people, depending upon the size of the platoon and how the squads break down. Within that platoon, let's use 4 squads, a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant. You're a team leader. That means that you have 7 other team leaders to draw upon and have as a resource. On top of that, you have 4 squad leaders to use as resources and examples. A platoon sergeant, and then a platoon leader. So if we do the math, 7 other team leaders, 4 squad leaders, that's 11, a platoon leader, and a platoon sergeant. There's 13 people within that platoon that have ascended from where you're starting. They are, for the most part, more seasoned than you, have more experience than you, have gone through a process that you're just starting out on as far as leadership training, leadership schools, and practical exercises. And that part is huge. In the military, you're given not only the academic portion, the things that are written, in black and white and through the classroom, but you're also given the ability to apply those things in exercises, right? In training, in field exercises, in simulations. That's the biggest difference going. The military trains to standard in theory, right? That's what they do. They train to standard, not to time. In the civilian side, they train to time, not to standard, because time is money, assets, value. They prioritize and value things differently. That's the biggest difference, is the support and leadership structure. In the military, if your counselings, your evaluations, your academics, your peer critiques don't merit you moving up, then you won't move up. You'll stay where you are until you can show that you're worthy, that you've met the standards of your superiors, your peers, your instructors, and all the people that value you in what work that you put in. That's the biggest difference. It's not everyone doesn't get a promote now bullet point on their evaluations. Some people do merit that. Some people do have those intangibles, and that's the way it is. We can look at it, bitch, complain, and moan, or we can take it as a lesson, reach out to that resource, find value in their approach, and try to apply some of those intangibles in our process, right? So what might be some tips to manage some of this growth? Uh, this some strategies to grow methodically. Understand that whichever way that you would like to go, and we, I guess at the end of the day, as human beings, and understanding the path of least resistance is preferred, right? And that's physiologically, that is neurologically, that is human, right? That's the human condition. But also understand that that's not an effective way in today's world, right? It's probably one of the ultimate dichotomies, in my opinion, in my humble little opinion, is that we know and understand that hard work, discomfort promotes the change. Yet we've evolved and developed in a way to conserve energy, to have reserves for fight or flight. Those prehistoric instincts just don't apply. However, they're still there. They're still in your DNA. That's the way humans are made. So what can we do? Well, we can develop our own process. First, by understanding what the human condition is, what it really is, and what we have to work with. Then, depending upon what environments we're working in, the are the people that we're working with, people that we're working for, and the people that may be working for us. We have to understand them. And then we can get to work. We can be the example we want other people to follow or other people to see above us, right? You can be a subordinate and be an example. Those two are not mutually exclusive. You can certainly be both. You have to understand where you are right here and now, right? You understand your shortcomings, understand your resources, and understand that in order for you to promote change within yourself, it starts and stops with you. You seek out those resources. If you're in a position of appointed authority, you delegate things that aren't your strength, with the caveat that you stick around and put some effort into learning and developing those weaknesses, right? Prioritize your well-being, prioritize your health, to and include your emotional and mental health. Prioritize fitness, nutrition, prioritize, again, those things that you want to set an example for, that you want to have an example to follow. Prioritize those. So as we wrap up today, when we talk about the pitfalls of rapid growth, we have to understand the downfall. For us at Bare Bones, rapid growth is a very ineffective way to ascend and to move up. It puts so many more obstacles in your way and sets you up for failure at certain levels. You might have a measure of success. And if you do, just understand that there's no foundation there. You're hanging perilously by a thread. To grow and develop in a methodical, strategic, structured manner helps the organization as a whole. Right? Quick ascension puts one above the sum of the whole, which is incredibly ineffective for team culture, for the work environment, for the division, the team, the organization across the board. And again, don't take Dave Thompson's word for it. I implore you to do a deep dive on every one of these little subcategories that we talk about and get into these little rabbit holes. I implore you to dig and do your own research. And I would be incredibly interested to hear the feedback. I'll gladly sit down and have a discussion with anybody who is interested in growing and developing. So that's a wrap for this episode. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everyone's attention. Your support is outstanding. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe, comment, and share. Again, we're trying to grow Bare Bones to be better servants of leadership. We're trying to expand and get our word out there. I believe we have some valuable content, and I believe we hold great value with people in general today. So again, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you on the next episode. I want to thank everyone for listening to this week's episode of Fido Talk with Dave Thompson. If you would, please subscribe and review. It helps a lot. Share the word with your friends and family. Have them check it out and provide some feedback. We'd love to hear it. Check us out at barebonesleadership.com for the latest blog and different perspectives on everything leadership. Follow us on the gram and on our newly updated Facebook page. Share your comments, your thoughts, your reviews. Any and all feedback is always welcome. And don't forget, keep kicking those fucking doors in, and as always, Fido. I appreciate you guys listening. Take care, and see you next time.